point is, it's the solar physicists, atmospheric physicists, had to create a whole new logarithmic band for what they called a megaflare. They had to create a whole new division for something that they never thought that was unprecedented.
In a moment, Major Ed Ames will be here. He's a remote viewer. I know, and I'm sure many of you know, and I'm not going to repeat, but he's a well-credentialed remote viewer who was in the early CIA remote viewing program that the government funded for so many years. I've read his entire military record. He is exactly who he says he is. One of the biggest things he's talked about has been our sun. And that the sun was going to get unpredictably and horrendously active and would first fire a shot across the bow. This is from thenewscientist.com, and the reason I'm going to read this is because a lot of people say, well, you know, Art, the sun has 11-year cycles, and there's nothing unusual about what's going on right now. Oh, are you wrong? Listen carefully. The headline is, Sun more active than for a millennium. The sun is more active now than it has been for a millennium. The realization, which comes from a reconstruction of sunspots stretching back 1,150 years, comes just as the sun has thrown, their word, a tantrum. Over the last week, giant plumes of material burst out from our star's surface and streamed into space, of course causing geomagnetic storms here on Earth, which, in fact, one of them so powerful, the most powerful ever recorded, put our instruments in total saturation for 11 minutes. Satellites out there designed to measure these things, they went into saturation. It went up against a peg and just stayed there. It was so powerful. Today, well, actually a couple of days ago now, when I called him during the intensity of all this, and he said, Art, that was it. That was a shot across the bow.
Just 2 weeks after Major Dame's national radio prediction in 2003, the largest solar flare in recorded history happened. The direction of the flare shot across Earth's path around the sun. If the coronal mass ejection had occurred just 3 months later, the world as we know it would have changed forever. But this would merely be a warning of things to come, a precursor to the Killshot itself. Major Dames revealed even more near-term events that would precede the Killshot. He informed the world on national radio that a new mutated killer crop fungus would soon be discovered in Africa and devastate food supplies, eventually traveling to other regions of the world over the seas to the United States. As time passed, many had forgotten about this prediction, until one day in 2007.
When I read this, as I said on the air, Ed, it stopped me cold in my tracks. Spores that begin in Africa, spread around the world. That sounds an awful lot like what you said.
The spores of which a fungal pathogen will begin in Africa and then migrate. I can't overemphasize the danger of this particular mutant. We said that it would be a mutation.
That is what you said, and it is a mutation.
Even more predictions were revealed on national radio. But this next event was more terrifying than many could have imagined.
I was flabbergasted by the data I got as a result of remote viewing the next X day in Tokyo, because this reactor problem, a reactor breaking, and what I said to the Japanese, I said, and on national radio in my country, this is going to be at least a mini Chernobyl, at least a mini Chernobyl. So again, what I said on national radio in my country, because the Japanese would not want to scare their citizens with this knowledge, was that Japan is going to experience, and when they experience this big earthquake, this next big earthquake, Tokyo will be okay, but this reactor problem will cause at least a mini Chernobyl.
But their breeder reactor is going to break, causing essentially another Chernobyl.
And is that a double containment type reactor?
It is, but it doesn't matter.
How big an earthquake are you talking about?
We're talking about a pretty big earthquake. These reactors in Japan are designed to take earthquakes up to about 7.8 without even breaking.
Right.
And so we're talking about a real catastrophic earthquake, a very big shaker that does not do a lot of damage to Tokyo. We know, for instance, we believe based upon our work and have described this for the Japanese viewing audience, the large modern skyscrapers standing.
On March 11, 2011, this tragic prediction came to pass. A massive 8.9 earthquake struck off the coast of Japan, resulting in a tsunami that swept across the Japanese landscape, engulfing entire towns. Just as Ed Dames predicted, power plants were damaged, resulting in the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. As the world watched these predictions come to pass, the inevitable question followed. How much time do we have left until the kill shot is upon us?
The time problem is a big bugbear. We can see an event. I used to see loosely. We can perceive big events, all of these types of big events, in the future, just like one could see a big mountain range in the future. You can see it ahead, but we don't have the parallax, in terms of an analogy, we don't have the parallax vision to adjudge the distance to this big mountain. We can only guess it. There's a very similar situation we have in remote viewing. We can perceive these events ahead, but we can't adjudge the distance in time. So it's still a big problem for us. That's why we had to go through this nut roll about looking at the preceding events that lead up to this huge catastrophic disaster on Earth. When is this going to happen? Because that's the big one. That's the big question. When is it going to happen? So much time has been dedicated by remote viewers, my team and others, individuals, to attempt to discern this. And again, since mind is outside of time, we cannot put a calendrical date on the beginning of this sequence. But what we've done over the years is establish preceding events, large, recognizable preceding events that lead up, that we can see, are dominoes that lead up to the beginning of this kill shot sequence.
Many of these preceding events have already come to pass, including the shot across the bow, the killer crop fungus, and the Japanese disaster. But what else did viewers foresee coming over the horizon?
We picked up the use of a nuclear weapon on the Korean Peninsula by the North Koreans, and this event would be one of the last events that humans recognize before the kill shot sequence begins. We haven't seen that yet.
This prediction was revealed years ago to the public on the Coast to Coast AM radio show. At the time, the nation had zero nuclear capability, and the notion that they would use a nuclear weapon as an act of war was widely believed to be absurd.
As time went on, the idea and the first nuclear test happened in North Korea. That got the attention of a lot of people who had heard my prediction, saying, "Uh-oh, I hope he's not right. That was just a test." But they are certainly developing. And we know now, we have remote view the fact that they're developing at least atomic mines, underwater mines, against U.S. subs. We know that as remote viewers. And we know that they're going to pop a nuke in anger, because that event was so big. It's not a little epiphenomenon, like a baseball game or something like that. It's a big event in history. We're not prophets. We're not prophesying. We're just using remote viewing to look that way, in a particular direction, at a particular topic. And it's just like turning your telescope onto and focusing it onto a particular target and studying it. That's what we do. We choose the targets.
The North Korean prediction appears capable of coming to pass any year now. But there is another event that remote viewers fear the most, a sign that the kill shot is imminent.
What would be that final recognizable event just prior to the kill shot sequence? The best that we could come up with, pushing ahead, the best that we could come up with was what appeared to be a space shuttle being forced down by what appears to be a meteor shower or something like that. For those of you who are not remote viewers, let me give you a little bit of insight into what remote viewing is in terms of a skill set. Most of the information that we derive from a target is in terms of word idea concepts, patterns of information that we perceive and turn into word, search our memory for words and apply those words, a written word on a piece of paper, and move on. The information we had that led us to believe that we're dealing with a space shuttle as a final precursor event to space shuttle coming down, as a final precursor event to the Killshot, was a collection of those rough sketches. So analytically, we're saying it looks like the space shuttle coming down.
As a result, there had been some confusion by not only the public, but also many remote viewers. The session sketches generated had resulted in the assumption that the craft being forced down was a U.S. space shuttle, since it was unique to the world at the time of the prediction.
Our sketches and drawings look like the current, very similar to the current U.S. space shuttle vehicles. There are some variations among viewers too. But we know that the Air Force has another program now, a nascent program. I think it's a spy vehicle that's up there, a maneuverable vehicle. That particular vehicle also looks like the U.S. space shuttle, the manned space shuttles.
Today, the recent U.S. space shuttle design is being emulated by many different space agencies around the globe, both government-oriented and private. No longer is the design unique to the U.S. space program, but the precursor itself remains the same. When a shuttle-like craft is forced down from orbit, the Killshot will begin.
When you see these particular events happen, that last one in particular, we don't know how much longer it will be until the Killshot, because mind is outside of time. The best that we could do is say, this event is the last big one that you'll see as remote viewers before this Killshot sequence happens. Regardless of how long it is, the period between this shuttle event and the beginning of the Killshot sequence, we know as viewers, and I have personally viewed this particular event a number of times because it's so powerful, that all of these warring parties that we see on the planet, all these many wars, that on the ground, all of these soldiers look up in the sky. They all look up. So something is happening in the sky. In fact, there's probably unprecedented atmospheric effects that in a recorded history, perhaps an unrecorded history, there's been events like this, but nothing in recorded history. Something happens in the atmosphere that has not been seen before, because all these soldiers are looking up, and then they go home. Their priorities change. They go home. So that's when it starts. This Killshot sequence will cripple communications worldwide. It will take out satellite communications in a very short order. Power grids, we're all aware of what it will do to power grids and what it has done in the past, and in certain instances, go back and check it out. The power grids will go down. So many people over many months of time and throughout the world will have no power. There are cities without power and communication. You can figure out for yourself what that will mean too. Not only will you not be able to pump gas, not only will you not be able to pump water, not only will there not be food on the shelves because there will be no gas in the trucks to take the food to the cities, but I could go on and on. You can figure the rest out for yourself. That's why this concept of sanctuary, knowing where to go with your last tank of gas, is so important.
I want to interrupt this for just a second to tell you folks that this is the importance of the Free American magazine that I've got available right now. It's up on freeamerican.com. It's available on shopfreeamerican.com, and it's really, really important that you get this issue and share it with other people. this, we have an answer. We have a home that we plan on building, that we have the technology to build, that is totally self-sufficient. So it doesn't matter if the wind blows all the power lines down, your home will remain standing. These homes in your neighborhood, we got 400 acres devoted to building these homes in Florida. And if a tsunami washes over, these homes will still be standing when whole neighborhoods have been swept away. And this is on the west coast, so we got a little bit better shot on the west coast and the Gulf to survive a tsunami that might come from that volcano that's exploding over there in the Canary Islands. These homes, the first half of this show that we had on, I tried to put up on YouTube. We got interrupted and got interrupted and got interrupted. So this is you're getting a very small segment. Now you can go to freeamerican.com and listen to Killshot today on Blog Talk Radio. We're also back up on TalkStream Live now, and I understand we got pretty good sound with TalkStream Live. We're back up on Truth Radio. But if you go listen to this whole show, you'll understand that this issue of the Free American is very important. In the first part of the show, I talked about the March on Washington on May 16th, but I've also talked about these Operation Noah's Ark, using veterans to build these self-sufficient homes, self-sufficient villages. We don't care if the power lines go down to the structures made out of hardened concrete, less than a 5% loss of energy. It'll stay cool in the summertime, it'll stay warm in the wintertime, and we're putting solar on the roof, we're putting gardens on the roof, we're putting water containers. There's thousands of gallons of water that will be in the basement of these homes. You can live on the second floor and run your business off of the first floor. We've got a chance to prepare for this kill shot. We got a chance to prepare for any disaster that might come our way. And we know these disasters are coming our way. I also, in the first part of this, I also talked about this whole Federal Reserve program. I talked about Gordon Duff, then and maybe we got the financing here, possible, because Ameritrust, I talked about Leo Wanta, who was on my show earlier this month, last month. He says that Leo Wanta's Ameritrust agrees to buy $1 trillion in 10-year Treasury bonds, which will finance America's national debt for the next year. Ameritrust, as outlined by the court, agrees to pay $1.7 trillion in income tax, reducing the national debt significantly overnight. Ameritrust has set aside $6 billion for disbursement under my advisement, monies for two purposes: the development of a program to end veteran homelessness and save a generation of young veterans. This is entirely private donated money. A non-profit entity exists and programs can start today. Not 1 cent will be stolen or diverted. Fund efforts to aid in closing the U.S. border and put 100% end to illegal immigration and drug trafficking. This involves billions of dollars carefully administered with full cooperation of state and local officials who have already been consulted and on board. Ameritrust has set aside minimally $1 trillion U.S. to build a high-speed rail system for the United States, with almost all components domestically constructed. The system includes stations, hotels, and much more. The minimal impact will include initial employment, begin at 80,000 with full employment by the manufacturer, installation, and security of the system. 400,000 new jobs, all privately financed without 1 cent of taxpayer money. Veterans will receive preference on all jobs. As is obvious, employment goes well beyond our available veteran community. Required technologies and entities that control such will be purchased and manufacturing facilities will be located within the United States. The economic impact on other transportation systems, particularly airlines, has been protected, and funding is available to minimize disruption. America, of course, will become the world's tourist destination. Travel costs for top domestic destination will lower by a minimum of 65%, no debt involved. 400,000 paychecks will put a dent on the recession, produce tax revenue to allow additional pay down of national debt. For the first time in decades, actually raise the standard of living for America. This fits in perfectly with Noah West, Operation Noah's Ark. I will be talking with Gordon Duff over the next few months about including this employment of the veterans, for the veterans, by the veterans, with building these self-sufficient family homes, and the rail system connecting these villages will be a bonus. Also by doing these homes and generating our own electricity, we now have the technology to put alternators, basically alternators, power generating alternators in the wheels of our electric cars, so you can travel forever. As long as your wheels rolling, you're generating your electricity. We have the answers, folks. We have the answers. We are preparing for this kill shot. I've been doing this for 20 years, and never, no time before in the history of the Patriot movement has so much been available to us. I'm giving you this on this show. I'm giving you this. Go back and go to Blog Talk Radio, listen to the show today. You can go to Blog Talk on January 21st. It's Clay Douglas. It's the Free American. Get the magazine, shop.freeamerican.com. Get this magazine, this November 15th issue. It'll tell you all about these super homes. The next issue, February 1st, will tell you about this Leo Wanta. I'll have Leo Wanta back on my show a little bit later, but I need your support. I need you to spend $2.99 and go to shop.freeamerican and get this book. If you get this magazine, if you get my book, Mystery Babylon, you'll find out exactly how George Bush, one of the things that George Bush did, besides blow up the Twin Towers, controlled demolition, and while they were stealing all of this money. We've got the answers here. The veterans today, and myself here, I swear that God puts me in these situations, introduces me to these people, gives me this information that I'm bringing you today. And I'm telling you, veterans, I took an oath to defend the Constitution. Oath keepers sprang up basically from the comments that I've been making for 20 years, that there was no expiration date on that oath that I took to defend the Constitution. Now, this kill shot is pretty important. Actually, Diane Johnson just came on my Skype and listened to the show with Dan yesterday, because I highly recommend Panda as a way to pass around that information. He's got cards, he's got flyers, he's got everything. Tell people about this NDAA. They know about this kill shot coming, so they are prepared to lock you up. I'm preparing to set you free.
There are some tangential effects that we're picking up also as remote viewers, and have picked up over the years. Apparently, the center of the Earth, the core of the Earth, is changing rapidly as an effect of what is happening on the sun. And if that's the case, then we're probably looking at, as an adjunct to effect to the kill shot sequence, we're probably looking at massive volcanism and earthquakes as well. And I think it's very important to point out, and very important indeed, because of the adiabatic heating of the atmosphere, we're going to have very high winds in many parts of the Earth.
Why not prepare for that now? These homes that I'm talking about, these homes that are featured in the Free American magazine right now, will withstand 350-mile-an-hour winds. It'll withstand tornadoes. It won't blow over. It won't wash away. This is what I am preparing for. God gave me all this information. Noah West, he introduced me to Noah West, and we are doing this. This magazine, Free American, January 15th, 2014, may be the most important magazine that I've ever put out.
The sky, the sun, the light will be obscured. It will be very difficult to grow crops on the surface because of both winds and lighting conditions. Solar physicists were chewing their nails because they were very, very concerned that the sun had been very quiet for so long, and this was not predictable. And so because it was not predicted, it did not follow the solar cycle, they were afraid that the sun might be doing something erratic. And that's when we began to see in the press and the news all these warnings about what major solar flares would do to the planet, to communications, to power grids, etc. And then in the last few months, we've seen that the sun's been relatively quiet. And now the scientists are saying, well, maybe the sun is going into a long period, years of quiescence. It's going to quiet down, and that's what we're seeing. And that might create global cooling. That may be why there's been the storms, snowstorms have been so severe, because the sun's quieter and not as active. Folks, it's the calm before the storm. It is the calm before the storm. The Killshot effects, and these will come and go, but the massive damage, first of all, will be to communications. Communications satellites, military satellites as well, will go down. We're not talking about single event latch-ups where you have a couple of semiconductors go bad. No, these things will be fried. Anybody in space, whether you're inside that little leaded shield on a space station or not, you're fried. You're in bad shape. You're going to die. Okay. So communication, power grids. Power grids, when they go down, folks, when the sun takes the power grids down, it's done it before. This time they won't go back up. It'll be months and months, if not years, to get power grids back up and running. There's going to be no power. Okay, so you'll need some. If you live in a place where it's going to be cold, you're going to need fuel to stay warm.
Now, folks, building these communities, 40 acres. We can put a number of these houses there. You will survive. This will survive. And if global communications go down, we can communicate the old-fashioned way. Hey, George! Hey, what's up today? In a village, in this global village, this Green Fire global village that we're talking about building with the veterans. Hopefully we can use some of Leo Wanta's money to build these. This is so important. I can't stress. And I need you to go to shop.freeamerican.com and buy this issue of the magazine. Read about these Green Fire homes and understand this is an answer. The March on Washington, I got a feeling, won't accomplish anything except getting a lot of people arrested. But by building our own communities and protecting our own communities, housing the veterans and having the veterans protect us in these communities, we've got an answer. Go ahead, Major Ed Dames.
So there's a lot of planning to do, folks. I would encourage you to start now, if not yesterday. I also want to point out that there's going to be most probably unprecedented geophysical events when this Killshot sequence starts. Earth can only take so much of protons hitting its magnetosphere, and on top of that, you're going to have X-rays that will be at Earth in 10 minutes. Right? Now we don't know how powerful those X-rays will be, but we do know that those protons will be extremely powerful. That mass from the sun. So we're looking at anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, perhaps, sometimes longer, depending on the velocity of the flare itself, before that actually impinges upon Earth's atmosphere and begins to heat it up. When the heating occurs, after that's done, that's when the power grids begin to go down. That's the X-rays themselves will take out satellites if they're powerful X-ray flares.
The Killshot, a series of devastating solar flares that will strike Earth, will cause the loss of all global GPS and communication systems. Power grids for entire regions and countries will fail. There will be unprecedented regional heating and atmospheric effects. But what parts of the world will be affected the most? And what areas do remote viewers see as survivable?
This is not to say, I want to presage, I want to caveat what I'm about to say and qualify it with this. Just because we have not seen sanctuaries out of the thousands of individual sanctuary remote viewing sessions and projects that work, just because we've not seen sanctuaries in some of the places I will outline, does not mean there are none there. I'm just saying a pattern has emerged that says the following. South America, we found no sanctuaries in South America or Latin America. We have found, additionally, very few sanctuaries in the entire southern hemisphere, including Australia and New Zealand, with some exceptions in Australia and one or two exceptions in New Zealand. Almost all of the sanctuary locations are in the northern hemisphere. For Europe, a number of sanctuaries for Europe, but almost without exception, they are all in generally northern Europe, but not too far north. So we're looking at certain places in Austria, Poland, all the way through Russia. But it's important to know that all of these sanctuary locations, almost without exception, are small locales that are distant, fairly distant from population centers or separated geographically by mountain ranges or bodies of water from large population density centers. And you know as well as I do that how many people do not have the option to move. Even if they knew where a sanctuary was, even if they knew where their own personal survival zone was, they don't have the option to move. For those people, here are the very, very essential things that you're going to need to try to sit this out. Fresh water is critical. You must have fresh water because it will be in short supply.
15,000 gallons in the basement of each one of these super homes.
Almost worldwide, not all over the world, but in many places, very short supply. Critical. As much access to fresh water as possible. If you happen to live next to fresh water, clean fresh water, you're lucky. That's the best condition to live in. Obviously, food. You're going to have food. Everybody now feels that something's coming down. Economically and globally, it has nothing to do with the Killshot. That's
food on the roof, covered, surrounded by a wall around the roof to protect it from the high winds, covered with the solar panels and to form a greenhouse. It's part of the plan.
Just economics alone. Food supply is already short, and food is expensive and going to be more expensive. But it will be absent. There will be no access to food once the Killshot sequence starts. You'll have to have stored food. Shelter. You need to have shelter, as you know, and you're going to need to protect yourself. You can't do this alone. People need people. You'll have to band together as communities, hopefully, and for self-protection and to help each other through this. Remote viewing in terms of forecasting and predicting remember, it's different. Remote viewing is direct knowledge. In this case, Killshot case, we're perceiving an event and we're downloading data, period. You can take that or leave it. Do whatever you want with the information. I feel that it's important in terms of a public service to put that info out, like we did in the case of a global economic collapse when gold was $230. I told the public on national radio it's going to $2,000. Everybody laughed at that. They laughed at the Japanese quake. In fact, the Japanese public were so scared they didn't want to believe that something like that would ever happen. A nuclear reactor breaking. Those kinds of things. You know, we've got a track record here. It's scary. It scares me. I don't even want to. I want to be in denial sometimes about the very information I download. I don't want to believe it, and yet I have to. I have no choice. But I sure don't want to think about it. But I'm going to have to. It's going to be forced down my throat sooner than not. An important consideration, and let's not kid ourselves. You can imagine how many emails I receive and how many people walk up to me and say, Ed, you know, I believe that this is going to happen based upon your past predictions and based upon my own remote viewing. But my family and friends think I'm bonkers, or they're not going to accept this, or they're angry at me for talking about it. What should I do? I always have the same answer. Well, I would do the same thing too, and do the same thing. Identify your own sanctuary location. Identify it. Recon it and become familiar with the area. Take some time off from work. If you're lucky enough to have a job under this administration, take some time off from work. Go and familiarize yourself with this place, this small town or village or wherever it is.
All right, the village we are planning on building for you. We need your help. This whole issue is about this village that Ed Dames is talking about. Right now, go to freeamerican.com. Go to shop.freeamerican.com. Get this issue. Share it with your friends. Your life depends on it. God bless you all. Thank you. We'll be back tomorrow. But this information just can't be beat. Thank you and God bless. We're out of time. Bye-bye.
Discover what's really going on in the news.